Timbaland versus Dilla, two of the most unique producers of our generation. But what happened when both flipped the exact same sample? Well, today we're putting their beats side by side to see who came out on top. You're about to see a side of their genius that's never been shown before. So let's settle this once and for all and find out who sampled it better. In this video, we're going to break down how both of these producers made beats using the exact same sample, the different sampling techniques that they used, and even some ideas you can use for your own beats. So let's start off by looking at the sample itself. This is a 70s soul sample that's been used hundreds, if not thousands of times by many producers like Q-Tip, J. Cole, and many more. But it's Timbaland and Dilla's beats using this sample that jump out to me the most. Let me show you why. First, we'll look at Timbaland's beat when he used this sample for Aaliyah's Heartbroken. Baby, 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 yeah. Now this beat was made way back in 1996 at a time when Timbaland still sampled a lot, and his sampling approach during this time was really inventive. Like for example, purposely warping vinyl records to create new and unique sounds and textures. But unfortunately, Timbaland is also the victim of some of the biggest issues coming from sampling. After he went through multiple lawsuits over the years, he began to slowly move away from sampling. And it's a shame because a lot of his sampling techniques and his beats were just truly impressive, and this beat here is no different. Here we see him using one of his main sampling techniques that he often used. Let me show you what it is. This is the section of the sample that Timbaland focuses on for his beat. And as you can hear, it's the part of the sample that has no drums and minimal instrumentation, making it perfect for experimentation. Now the first thing I want to point out in this beat is Timbaland's drums. I just find it impressive how clean and loud these drums are, and we even have some of that unusual Timbaland rhythm within this beat, another production technique that he was known for. But in terms of how the sample is used, he uses a resampling technique of playing one chop at multiple different pitches. Now this might seem simple, but it is incredibly difficult to do right. This technique requires a producer to find a single piece of a sample that not only sounds good, but also makes sense both musically and rhythmically when it's played at multiple different pitches and speeds. Basically, a lot of things need to go right for this technique to work, and that's exactly what Timbaland is able to pull off with this sample. So Timbaland uses this piece of the sample right here. And as you can see, this piece of the sample works perfectly when it's played both 4 and 9 semitones lower, which is exactly how Timbaland builds his core loop. Now again, to show you just how hard this is, let's say we took this different piece of the sample here and used it. What will happen? Well, this first chop actually sounds perfect, but if we listen to that second chop, the timing is off. So what if we tried changing the pitch of that second chop? Well now, while the timing of the notes does sound a little bit better, musically speaking, it doesn't sound satisfying or like it works with the first chop now. It's so easy for this idea not to work because either the sounds don't play at the correct timing or musically they're just not making sense. So then from here, Timbaland adds a simple bass line that follows the sample in the beat. And here I'm using Note Grabber, which lets me see all the notes in the sample. And as you can see, the root notes of Timbaland's loop are an F sharp and a C sharp, and that's exactly what Timbaland uses to build his bass line. Just a really cool beat, and this resampling technique was the core of many of Timbaland's beats from this era. But now let's take a look at Dilla's beat using this exact same sample for Busta Rhymes 10 years later on You Can't Hold the Torch.
Hey, yeah, what happened to the love for the game, for the music?
Now what's interesting about Dilla and this sample is that he actually used it multiple times throughout the year. For one, he used it on an old Slum Village remix.
You know what love is. Say it with me sometime. You know what love is. 2-3 is also love tip, y'all.
And other beats have been unearthed from beat tapes using the same sample too. And while the beat he did for Busta might sound like a simple loop on the surface, the way this beat is put together is bizarre when you break it down. First, let me quickly show you the drums for this beat. As you may have noticed, there is something slightly unusual here. We don't have a kick on the 1. And part of the reason why is because this loop he builds using the sample doesn't start on the 1 either. Here are the chops that J Dilla uses, and as you can see, the looping point is nowhere near the normal downbeat. Just a very odd way to make a beat, but that's just the first layer of the sample that we're looking at here. There are actually multiple layers of the same sample being used. What Dilla does is he brings in a second layer of that high-pitched singing into the beat, but he does this in an unusual way too. Now here's how most producers would approach doing this. They would try cloning out the sample and copying and pasting the exact same chops from the first layer, and then simply just repitching this new layer up like so. But as you heard, this also repitches the keys from within the sample, and the entire beat now just sounds pitched up. At this point, you could try using an EQ, but as you can hear, it's near impossible since those keys sit in a similar frequency as the singing. So what does J Dilla do? How does he solve this problem? This is where I am making an educated guess here, but he doesn't simply just copy and paste the same chops and pitch them up. Instead, he uses an entirely different part of the sample to do this. As you can hear, this other section of the sample has keys playing at a much lower octave, with that same singing on top though. And I believe this is what J Dilla does. He applies an EQ to this section. Since those keys are much lower and playing at a lower frequency, they are further away from the vocals, so separating them with an EQ is actually possible now. But this singing only lasts a short amount of time before those brighter keys come in. So this is where he uses a boomeranging technique with these chops like so, where he's able to create an infinitely long layer of vocal singing by playing this chop back and forth. This basically allows Dilla to control the second layer of the sample and use it whenever he wants, helping bring more texture and make the beat feel less repetitive compared to it just being a simple loop. So these two legends have definitely shown a lot of sampling skills in their beats, but how about I make a beat using the same sample that can stand up to theirs? It's a tall order, one that I will probably fail at, but hey, let's try anyways. Instead of using the same part of the sample and focusing my beat on the Fender Rhodes and the vocal, I want to look for something a little bit different within the sample. And thankfully, I have the power of stem splitting available to me, so let's remove everything but the instruments in this beat and see what we can find. So I think this might be the start of something. These guitars sound nice to me, so let's focus on that for our loop. And just like my video a while back on Metro versus Kanye, this is kind of feeling like a dance loop to me, so let's go with that idea. Next, I'll add some reverb and chorus on top of this loop. But as of right now, this loop definitely needs more fullness, some body to it. And right now it's just a few guitar licks, so let's try to create our own pattern to go along with this sample. Here I'm going to use Note Grabber again to see what the notes are and what I've built. And again, you can download and try this out for free if you want. So now by seeing which notes exist in my sample, like here we have a D sharp, here is both an A and an A sharp. It's kind of faint, but you can see there's an F over here and also a G up here. And so just by knowing these 5 notes, I have enough to build what I need to get this beat to feel a little bit more full. I can do that by just grabbing this Rhodes, and I'll start building chords using these notes that I found with a note grabber. Here's a D sharp, and an A sharp, and a G. And then for the next chord, I'll bring in that F and the A that I haven't used yet. And then I'll just use the remaining notes to build out more full chords. Now my beat is starting to feel much more full thanks to this layer. But this beat does need structure, so let's add in some dance concepts into this beat, like 4 on the floor kicks, and some claps and some hats. At this point, I feel this beat does need a little bit more personality, so let's bring in some percussion that feels a little bit more unique. And while this does help, the beat still feels incomplete somewhat to me. Like it's just lacking some overall musical direction to follow. And I think bringing in an actual bass line will help with that problem. So I'll grab this synth bass here. And once again, thanks to Note Grabber, I already know which notes work perfectly with what I've built so far. I do think there does need to be a little bit more added into this beat right now. It feels like there's a missing gap of frequencies above the bass but below the instrumentation that I've added so far into the beat. So I think maybe adding this synth could help. So let's build yet another pattern with this. And I'm really liking the way this is sounding. It kind of reminds me of Ross from Friends, who's one of my favorite artists right now. I think just a few more details like some extra guitar licks and some percussive sounds, and this beat will be finished. Not a hip-hop beat at all, I know, but sometimes you just gotta go wherever the beat takes you. Let me know if I've completely failed with this beat or if you enjoyed it, and also let me know whose beat is your favorite in the comments below. Like and subscribe. Once again, try out Note Grabber for free. You can find that right next to me, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.